Hello, this happened a few months ago. Just to clarify, we live in a pretty good neighborhood. To show you how safe it is, or so we thought. A few days before this happened, my dad took me to my drumming lesson. We were gone for about an hour, and when we came back home, we realized that we had left the key in the lock outside the whole time. No one took it, nor came in. This has happened before. Now, on to the actual story. One night at about 11 p.m., my mom and I were in the sitting room. My dad and sister were in bed. My mom was asleep on the couch, and I was playing PUBG Mobile. At one point, I could hear noises coming from the hallway. Thinking it was the cats, I brushed it off. I started to hear more noise, and then thought, what the fuck are they doing? Then, I saw something roll on the floor by the dining room table, and one of the cats walking up to it, again thinking it was the cats. The object, however, was placed on top of a vanity we have in the hallway. They don't go on top of that, but we do have a 9 to 10-month-old curious kitten. I then heard a male voice. At first, I thought it might be one of my teammates in the game, talking. I quickly realized it was not. I then thought my dad had gotten up, which is pretty common for him, so I asked my mom, I didn't realize she was falling asleep, if my dad had come down and if it was him. She sleepishly said yes, so I tried to brush it off again. Suddenly, I see this thing, which I found out after were cleaning wipes for the interior of the cars that were placed on the vanity, flying at me and landing on the floor or near the stool in front of me. I don't remember. I thought, that can't be the cats. I got up and walked over to the hallway. I got to the step when I realized that my dad's walking stick and a straw hat that was on top of our coat hanger were on the floor. Neither cat has ever gotten on top of it. I walked up the step and I heard movement in the office. It was dark. The office is right next to the front door, about 2 meters from the living room front door. I thought it might be my sisters looking for something. And then this guy gets up, comes out of the room, goes to the front door, unlocks it, and walks out. He was wearing a hoodie, and I didn't see his face. I was paralyzed with fear and confusion. My mind immediately went to, do I know him? After he left, I yelled out to my mom that someone just walked out. She was obviously confused and concerned. We realized he came in from the back door, which was unlocked. He either climbed the gate, which is about 2 meters high, or walked up the neighbor's stairs and then over the wall. You can see the back door from the street. The only things he took were the back door keys and a Bluetooth player, we believe, which we don't care about. We made a barricade that would make noise if he came back and sat with knives and a big 2-tooth fork until about 5 a.m. We had another lock, so Dad changed it the next day. I slept with a knife under my bed that night. Looking back, I wish I had done something. I played rugby for 2 years. I know the basics to tackle, but I couldn't move, obviously because of fear. But my brain was also trying to understand what was happening. I probably could have taken him on. He was very thin and looked to be between 17 and 19, 20 at most, judging by his style and body. We think we might know who did it, but they didn't break in. They only took 2 things, walked past all of our valuables. He didn't do anything to us. It almost looked like he was trying to get my attention as well, almost as if it was a bet, and he tried to find a reason to get out. Either that, or he's the worst robber I've heard of. I'm just happy my sister was in bed. It probably would have been a different story if she had been there with us. A lot of people think they know how they'd react in certain situations. I am living proof. You don't. I thought I'd scream at least, but nothing. We now lock our doors every night. Every time I hear a noise, I get a little frightened. But I'm okay. If he wanted to hurt me, he would have tried. We got lucky. For clarity, I live in a fairly quiet apartment complex on the 2nd floor. We had an elderly neighbor, I'll call him Joe. He was about 89 years old. This happened at about 1 a.m. I was watching Netflix in bed, and my partner was asleep. I had been hearing faint banging noises almost the entire night, but didn't really think anything of it. I thought I heard someone scream, so I paused my Netflix to see what was going on. But I didn't hear anything, so I continued on with what I was doing. I heard another scream, paused my Netflix, and that's when I heard someone yelling for help. I woke up my partner, and that's when we both heard, "Someone please help, she's trying to kill me." I was fucking terrified, but I wasn't going to just do nothing, so my partner and I ran outside to see what was going on. We get out to the hallway, and we see Joe and some 30 to 40-year-old woman at the top of the steps. The steps were concrete, and there were about 20 of them. As we take a closer look, we see Joe hanging onto the railing for dear life, and this crazy bitch trying to push him down the steps. There's blood all over the walls, and he's bleeding all over the place. My partner rushes over to grab her off of him, and I call the police. We're not really paying much attention to the woman at this point, because we're trying to see if our neighbor is okay, so she takes off somewhere. The police get there fairly quick and get the story. Apparently, she's his caretaker and was trying to force him to drive her to get drugs at 1 a.m. And since he wouldn't comply, she was trying to force him down the steps by pushing him down them, which, if she succeeded, he would have definitely passed away, since there are so many steps, and they're also concrete. While the police are getting their reports, the ambulance gets there and they're checking on our neighbor. Out of nowhere, the lady comes, quite literally out of the bushes, and jumps in Joe's car and takes off. As she was backing out, she hit the ambulance with his car and just sped off. Not sure why she was so persistent on having Joe drive her when she had his keys anyways. The cops go after her and catch her shortly after. Turns out she's been arrested 50 plus times for just about anything you can think of. When my boyfriend and I, 24 female, lived with his grandparents a few years ago, my boyfriend worked early morning hours. He would leave the house around 4 a.m. One winter morning, while it was still pitch black out, my boyfriend kissed me goodbye and I went back to bed. A few minutes later, I heard continuous knocking at the front door. Immediately, I assumed it was him forgetting something, and being half asleep, I ran up the stairs from my room to open the door, but as soon as I reached for it, his grandma called out to me from upstairs and said, "Don't open the door, that's not him." I froze and was too afraid to even peek through the front door window to see who it actually was. His grandma looked outside and said it was a man that had no jacket on. He then left our doorway and went on his way through the streets. Our grandma told me she knew immediately that it wasn't my boyfriend, because if it were actually him, he would have opened the door with his house key. He wouldn't wake us up this early in the morning. Not long after, a cop car cruised down our street with a light on, as if they were searching for someone. I was so terrified that I decided to sleep upstairs in the living room. Later on in the day, our grandma spoke to our neighbors and found out that he was also pounding on everyone's doors on the same block. One of the neighbors, a couple houses down, is a huskier, taller guy, and said he talked to the stranger through the door, asking what he wanted. The man said someone is looking for him, they want to shoot him, and that he needs to hide from them. I'm more on the petite side, and at the time I was about 19. I can't imagine what could have happened had I opened the door for him, or if my boyfriend's grandma wasn't there.